Don't come to the weekend barbecue. That text from my brother was brutal enough, but seeing Mom tap the heart icon on it was what actually severed the tie. I did not argue. I just typed, understood, and locked my phone screen. They thought they were cutting me out of a family dinner, but by mid-morning the next day, they would step into my office and discover they had just walked into a buzzsaw. My name is Marley Perry, and usually, the only thing that keeps me company at 11 o'clock at night is the low, expensive hum of the building's HVAC system. I was sitting on the 24th floor of Aldercrest Dynamics, a massive glass needle buried deep in the heart of what people like to call the Silicon Forest, just outside of Portland, Oregon. Outside, the weather was doing exactly what it always did in late October. A relentless gray drizzle smeared against the floor-to-ceiling windows, turning the city lights below into long, weeping streaks of amber and white. Inside, the air was filtered, temperature controlled to a perfect 68 degrees, and smelled faintly of ozone and industrial cleaner. It was a sterile world, a cold world, but it was mine. I looked down at the documents spread across the expanse of my mahogany desk. This was the culminating effort of 18 months of negotiation. It was a partnership agreement for a new line of neural-linked mobility recovery devices. A contract that was going to change the trajectory of this company and likely the industry itself. The valuation on the paper in front of me was staggering. We were talking about an initial injection of $52 million, with a projected revenue stream that hit 9 figures within 3 years. My signature was the only thing holding up the execution. I was the Chief Operations Executive, a title I had clawed my way toward while my peers were busy spending their 20s finding themselves in Europe or starting artisanal coffee shops. I did not find myself, I built myself. I uncapped my pen. It was a heavy black lacquer rollerball that felt cold against my thumb, just as the tip touched the paper. The silence of the office was shattered by the aggressive vibration of my phone against the hardwood of the desk. I froze. My personal phone rarely rang this late. My work phone was constantly lighting up with crisis management alerts or server downtime reports, but the personal one usually stayed dark. I glanced at the screen. It was a notification from the Perry Hive, our family group chat, a chat that mostly consisted of my mother sharing conspiracy theories from Facebook and my father posting blurry photos of his lawnmower. I picked it up. The blue light was harsh in the dim office. The message was from Cole, my younger brother, the golden child, the boy who could set a house on fire and be praised for the warmth. The text was short. It did not have a greeting. It did not have a softening emoji. It read, "Don't come to the weekend barbecue. My fiancé says you make everything uncomfortable." I stared at the words. I read them once, then twice. My brain, trained to analyze data patterns and risk assessments, tried to process the logic. Uncomfortable, I had paid for the catering at the last 3 family gatherings. I had sat silently while Cole's new fiancé, Sloane, made passive-aggressive comments about my suit jackets or my lack of makeup. I had listened to my father brag about Cole's vague consulting business while I was running operations for a tech giant. I never raised my voice. I never caused a scene. I was the bank, the fixer, the mechanic, the safety net. I was not the drama. But then, the notifications started pinging underneath the message. Darlene Perry liked, "Don't come to the weekend barbecue." Rick Perry loved, "Don't come to the weekend barbecue." Aunt Linda laughed at, "Don't come to the weekend barbecue." That was the moment. It was not a heartbreak. Heartbreak implies a shattering, a loud crash of emotional devastation. This was different. This was a quiet, mechanical failure, like a fuse blowing in a circuit board to prevent a fire. I felt something physical inside my chest, a tight knot of obligation and lingering childhood hope. Simply snap. It severed. For 38 years. I had been operating under a faulty algorithm. I believed that if I was good enough, successful enough, and generous enough, I would eventually earn my seat at their table. I believed that competence could buy love. I looked at the screen, at the little thumbs-up icon next to my mother's name. She had not asked why. She had not typed a defense. She had clicked a button that endorsed my exclusion. They were relieved. They wanted the wallet, but they did not want the woman attached to it. They wanted the safety net, but they despised the reminder that they needed one. I did not feel like crying. I felt a sudden, terrifying clarity. It was the same clarity I felt when I had to fire a department head for embezzlement or cut a failing product line. It was the cold calculations of loss limitation. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I could have typed a paragraph. I could have reminded Cole that I paid off his car loan 2 years ago. I could have asked Mom why she was siding with a woman who had been in the family for 6 months over the daughter she had raised for nearly 4 decades. I could have screamed into the digital void. Instead, I typed one word: understood. I hit send. Then I placed the phone face down on the desk, covering the light, as if I were closing the lid on a coffin. I picked up the pen again. My hand did not shake. If anything, my grip was firmer than it had been a minute ago. I looked at the contract for the mobility devices. This deal was about helping broken things move again. It was about structural integrity. I signed my name, Marley Perry, in sharp, angular strokes. The ink flowed smoothly, binding the agreement, locking in the future. I capped the pen and set it down, aligning it perfectly parallel with the edge of the document. The office was silent again, save for the rain. But my mind was no longer on the $52 million contract. It had shifted gears. I was now in risk mapping mode. It was a professional reflex. When a variable in a system behaves unpredictably, you isolate it, you analyze the dependencies, you determine the exposure. My family had just declared me a liability. They had identified me as a hostile element to their happiness. Cole's text was a formal notice of termination. I reached for my leather-bound planner. I needed to check my schedule for the weekend. To formally cross out the barbecue, I flipped the pages to Saturday, October 25th. There it was, written in my neat, small block letters, 1 p.m., Cole's house, BBQ, 4402 Pineview Lane. I stared at the address, 4402 Pineview Lane. A strange sensation prickled at the back of my neck. I knew that address, obviously. I knew it because I had been there for the housewarming party 6 months ago, where Cole had strutted around showing off the granite countertops and the smart home thermostat like he was the king of the suburbs. But there was another reason that specific string of numbers and street name felt heavy in my mind. It triggered a different memory, something administrative, something bureaucratic. I turned my chair toward my computer monitors. I had 3 screens glowing in front of me. On the far right screen, I minimized the Aldercrest work portal and opened a secure, encrypted folder labeled Personal Assets/Tax Structures. My family knew I had money. They saw the car I drove, a sensible but high-end sedan. They saw the suits, but they did not know the scope. They did not know about the investments, the diversified portfolios, or the holding companies I had set up to manage my tax liabilities. I kept my financial life hermetically sealed from them, mostly because I knew that if they saw the real numbers, the requests for loans would never stop. I opened a spreadsheet titled Real Estate Holdings, FY 2025. I scrolled down past my own apartment in the Pearl District, past a small rental property I owned near the university, and there, on line 14, was the entry, Property ID, 992-Alpha, address 4402 Pineview Lane, legal owner, Juniper Ridge Holdings, LLC. I sat back in my chair, the leather creaking softly. The only sound in the room was the hum of the hard drive and the rain. Cole did not own that house. He thought he did, or rather, he thought he was renting to own from a faceless property management company that had given him a suspiciously good deal on the lease terms because his credit score was barely hovering above 500. He had told the family he knew a guy who hooked him up. He loved to project the image of a man with connections. The truth was, the guy was a shell company, and the shell company was me. I had bought that house through Juniper Ridge Holdings 2 years ago when Cole was about to be evicted from his previous apartment. I had instructed the property manager to offer it to him at 30% below market rate, with no credit check required, just to keep him off the street and out of my parents' basement. I had never told him. I had never told Mom or Dad. I wanted to help him without him feeling the weight of my charity, without giving him another reason to resent my success while taking my money. I looked at the text message notification again, still visible on my lock screen. Don't come to the weekend barbecue. They were banning me from my own property. They were going to stand in my backyard, drink beer on my patio, grill burgers on a deck that I had paid to reinforce last summer, and laugh about how much better the vibe was without Marley there to bring down the mood. They were going to celebrate their exclusion of me while standing on the very earth that I owned. A cold, dry laugh escaped my throat. It was a short sound, devoid of humor. I closed the spreadsheet. I did not need to look at it anymore. I knew the terms of the lease agreement by heart, because I had drafted them myself. There was a clause in there. Clause 14B. It related to the conduct of tenants and the right of the owner to inspect the property with 24 hours' notice. There were also strict clauses regarding unauthorized alterations and subletting. But the most interesting part was the renewal date. The lease was month to month. It was designed that way to give Cole flexibility, or so he thought. In reality, it was designed to give me an eject button if he ever destroyed the place. I stood up and walked to the window. The reflection staring back at me was composed. My hair was pulled back in a severe bun, not a single strand out of place. My blouse was silk, gray, impeccable. I looked like what I was, a machine built for corporate warfare. My family thought they were dealing with the sister who fixed the Wi-Fi and loaned them $200 for groceries. They thought they were dealing with the quiet girl who sat in the corner at Thanksgiving and nodded politely while they mocked her career choices. They had absolutely no idea who I actually was. They did not know that for the last 10 years, I had been swimming with sharks in boardrooms where a single misplaced comma could cost a company $10 million. They did not know that I dismantled egos for a living. They wanted to cut ties, understood. But when you cut a tie with the person holding the rope, you don't just float away free, you fall. I looked down at the city lights of Portland, blurring through the rain. The weekend barbecue was less than 48 hours away. If they wanted me to disappear, I would grant their wish. I would be a ghost. But they were about to learn a very hard lesson about the physics of their own existence. They were about to learn that you do not bite the hand that feeds you, especially when that hand owns the roof over your head. I turned away from the window, grabbed my bag, and walked out of the office. I didn't slam the door. I let it click shut, a soft, final sound that echoed in the empty hallway. The game had changed. They thought they were the main characters in a family drama. They were wrong. They were just breached clauses in a contract they didn't even know they had signed. To understand why I walked out of my office into the rainy Oregon night with a plan to dismantle my brother's life, you have to look at the blueprints of how we were built. Buildings do not just collapse for no reason. There are always stress fractures, rusted bolts, and weak foundations that were ignored for decades until gravity finally demanded its due. My family was a house painted a cheerful yellow on the outside, but inside, the load-bearing walls were rotting away. We grew up in a town just outside of Salem, a place where the lawns were manicured to within an inch of their lives, and neighbors judged you by the cleanliness of your guttering. We were not rich, but my parents were obsessed with the optics of the middle class. We were a nice family. That was the brand. And in every brand, there is a star product, and there is the back-end infrastructure that makes the product work. Cole was the product. I was the infrastructure. From the moment he was born, 5 years after me, Cole was a supernova. He was loud, vibrant, and possessed a terrifyingly effective charm that seemed to short-circuit any disciplinary action my parents might have considered. If he broke a vase, he would look up with wide, teary eyes and offer a wobbly apology that made my mother, Darlene, coo and sweep the shards away, terrified he might cut himself. If I broke a vase, I was clumsy. I was careless. I was handed a broom and told to think about the cost of things. I was a quiet child. I did not have Cole's gravity while he was busy performing for aunts and uncles, singing songs or telling exaggerated stories. I was usually in the garage or the corner of the living room. taking things apart. I was fascinated by how things worked. I wanted to know why the toaster popped up, how the radio caught voices from the air, and why the remote control needed batteries. I would disassemble old clocks, laying the gears out in perfect, concentric circles, to my parents. This was not a sign of an engineering mind. It was a defect. It was weird. My mother would sigh, looking at my grease-stained fingers, and ask why I could not just play with dolls or draw pictures like the other girls. I was difficult because I required explanations. I was labeled intense and hard to please, simply because I did not accept "because I said so" as a valid logical argument. The dynamic solidified when I was 12 and Cole was 7. It is a memory that I have dissected 1,000 times, viewing it from every angle, trying to find a version where I matter. I cannot find one. It was a Tuesday in November. I had won the state junior mathematics competition. This was not a participation trophy. I had spent 3 months studying advanced calculus concepts that were 4 years above my grade level. I had beaten students from private academies in Portland. I had a heavy gold-plated trophy and a certificate with a foil seal that looked like a shield. I remember sitting in the back seat of our station wagon on the way home, holding that trophy against my chest, the cold metal seeping through my sweater. I was vibrating with a rare, desperate hope. I thought, this is it. This is the currency they accept. Today, I am the good one. We pulled into the driveway, and before I could even unbuckle my seatbelt, chaos erupted. Cole was sitting on the front porch, howling. He had been playing in the yard and had tripped over the garden hose, scraping his knee. It was a minor abrasion, the kind that barely bleeds. But Cole was screaming as if he had been shot. My parents moved with the synchronization of a trauma team. My father, Rick, threw the car into park and bolted out. My mother was right behind him. They scooped Cole up, cooing, checking the scrape, carrying him inside like a wounded soldier returning from the front lines. I sat in the car for 2 minutes. Just sat there. Eventually, I opened the door and walked inside. The kitchen was a flurry of activity. Mom was getting ice. Dad was getting the first aid kit. Cole was sitting on the counter, sobbing dramatically between bites of a cookie they had given him to calm him down. I walked up to the table and placed my trophy down. It made a heavy thunk sound against the wood. "Mom," I said. "I won." My mother did not even turn around. She was busy wrapping a bandage around Cole's knee, which was barely pink. "Not now, Marley," she snapped, her voice sharp with stress. "Can't you see your brother is hurt, God? Why do you always have to make everything about you when there is a crisis?" I stood there, frozen. A crisis. He had a scraped knee. I had just conquered the entire state in mathematics. "But look," I whispered, pushing the trophy forward. My father looked up, his face flushed with annoyance. "Marley, take that thing to your room. We need to make sure he doesn't go into shock. Go, now." I picked up the trophy. I walked to my room. I placed it on my bookshelf. I did not cry. Instead, I remember feeling a cold, gray shutter slammed down over my heart. I analyzed the data. The conclusion was undeniable. My achievements were invisible. His pain was paramount. That pattern became the operating system of our family. If Cole failed a class, it was the teacher's fault for not understanding his learning style, and he was taken out for pizza to cheer him up. If I brought home an A-, I was asked why it wasn't an A. If Cole got a speeding ticket, Dad paid it so his insurance rates wouldn't go up. When I needed a car for college, I was told that working for what you want builds character, and I spent 2 years flipping burgers to buy a beat-up sedan that smelled like wet dog. I grew up believing a lie. I thought that if I could just be useful enough, if I could fix enough problems, if I could pay for enough things, eventually the balance sheet would tip in my favor. I thought love was a transaction. I thought that if I became the person they called when the roof leaked or when they needed help with tax forms, they would finally see me. So I became the fixer. I went to engineering school on a full scholarship because I knew they would not pay for it. I graduated at the top of my class. I started climbing the corporate ladder with a ferocity that scared my peers. I did not do it for the money, at least not at first. I did it because competence was the only armor I had. But a strange thing happened as I became successful. I learned to hide it. By the time I was 28, I was making more money than my parents combined. But whenever I went home, I dressed down. I drove my old car. I never talked about my bonuses or my promotions. Why? Because I had learned another hard lesson during my early 20s. When I landed my first major job as a systems analyst, I took the family out to dinner to celebrate. I paid the bill. It was $300. My father looked at the receipt, then looked at me, and said with a tight, forced smile, "Must be nice to have money to burn. Some of us actually have to work for a living." He felt small. And when Rick Perry felt small, he made sure everyone else felt smaller. From that day on, I compartmentalized my life. There was Marley the executive, who wore Italian silk and commanded rooms full of engineers. And then there was Marley the daughter, who wore jeans and hoodies, fixed the Wi-Fi router, and listened to Cole talk about his entrepreneurial ventures that were really just pyramid schemes. I became a master of financial camouflage. I bought my apartment through a trust. I invested in stocks that didn't send paper mail to the house. I let them believe I was doing okay, just a mid-level manager pushing papers. I let them believe that the money I gave them for emergencies, which happened with alarming frequency, was a stretch for me. "I can lend you the $500 for the car repair, Cole," I would say, "but I'll have to move some things around." "Thanks, sis," he would reply, barely looking up from his phone. "You're a lifesaver. I'll pay you back next month." He never paid me back, not once. In 15 years, the ledger of bad debt between Cole and me ran into the tens of thousands. I never asked for it. I wrote it off as the cost of keeping my family. I was paying a subscription fee for a place at the table, but the real damage wasn't the money. It was the erosion of my own identity. I watched Cole drift through his 20s and into his 30s on a cloud of unearned confidence. He started a t-shirt business that failed. He tried to be a DJ. He tried to be a real estate agent, but never passed the exam. Through it all, my parents cheered him on. They called him a dreamer. They said he had vision. Meanwhile, I was becoming a titan in my industry. I was negotiating mergers. I was optimizing supply chains for medical devices that saved lives. I was respected. When I walked into a boardroom in Portland or Seattle or San Francisco, people sat up straighter. They listened. They took notes. My words carried weight, but the moment I crossed the threshold of my parents' house, or Cole's rental, I shrank. I reverted to the 12-year-old girl holding a trophy that nobody wanted to see. I became the tech support. I became the backup bank account. I became the person they tolerated because I was useful, but disliked because I was not fun. They called me rigid. They called me cold. "Marley takes everything so seriously," Mom would say to her friends, rolling her eyes. "She needs to learn to live a little, like Cole, the man who was 33 years old and still had his cell phone bill on the family plan." The introduction of Sloan into the ecosystem was the catalyst that finally exposed the rot. Sloan was not the cause. She was just the accelerant. She saw the dynamic clearly because she was a predator. And predators are excellent at spotting the weak antelope in the herd. She saw that Cole was the golden idol, and I was the servant polishing the altar. She realized that to secure her place, she didn't need to impress me. She just needed to amplify the narrative that I was the problem. She started small. Comments about how I looked tired, or how my job sounded stressful and boring. Then it escalated to excluding me from inside jokes. And finally, the text message, "Don't come to the weekend barbecue." It was the culmination of 30 years of training. They had trained me to accept crumbs. And now they were surprised that I wasn't grateful for them. They thought I would fade away. They thought I would sit in my boring apartment and cry. But they had forgotten one thing. They had forgotten that the quiet girl in the garage didn't just take things apart to see how they worked. She took them apart to learn how to build better machines. And she learned how to identify the parts that were broken beyond repair. In the corporate world, when a legacy system is draining resources, corrupting data, and failing to perform, you do not keep patching it. You do not keep apologizing for it. You decommission it. You shut it down. I sat in the darkness of my apartment that night, staring at the ceiling. I thought about the little girl with the math trophy. I grieved for her for exactly 5 minutes. And then, I let her go. The woman who remained was not the daughter or the sister. She was the chief operations executive, and she was done subsidizing a subsidiary that was actively hostile to the parent company. At work, I was feared and respected. At home, I was the mechanic who paid the bills. The tragedy wasn't that they didn't love me. The tragedy was that I had spent my entire life paying them to pretend that they did. But the payments had just stopped, and tomorrow, the repo man was coming, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to be the one fixing the leak. I was going to be the one turning on the flood. The timeline of my family's disintegration did not begin with the text message about the barbecue. That was just the death certificate. The actual terminal diagnosis arrived 6 months earlier, walking into a mid-range Italian restaurant on the west side of Portland, wearing designer heels that I instantly recognized as high-quality knockoffs. Her name was Sloane Whitaker. Cole had been dating her for 4 months before he decided it was time for the grand reveal. He had hyped her up in the group chat as a visionary, a brand consultant, a woman who, and I quote, understood the hustle. When they walked into the restaurant, the air in the room seemed to change pressure. Sloane did not just enter a space. She performed an entrance. She was blonde, polished to a high sheen, and spoke with the breathless, over-enunciated cadence of someone who is constantly recording a story for social media. My husband, Pedro, was sitting next to me. Pedro is a structural engineer. He deals in load-bearing capacities and tensile strength. He is a man of few words, dark eyes, and absolute stillness. Under the table, his hand found my knee and squeezed it once. It was his nonverbal signal for brace yourself. Sloane hugged my mother first, a performance of affection that involved a lot of squealing and cheek touching, but very little actual contact. Then she moved to my father, charming him instantly by complimenting his watch. Finally, she turned to me. Her eyes did a vertical scan. It took less than 2 seconds. She looked at my sensible flat shoes, my unbranded gray slacks, and the complete lack of jewelry on my wrists. She cataloged me, priced me, and dismissed me, all before she even said hello. "You must be Marley," she said. Her voice was sugary, but her eyes were flat. "Cole talks about you all the time. He says you're the—" She paused, searching for the word. "The responsible one." "It is nice to meet you, Sloane," I said, extending my hand. She took it limply. "Cole says you work in, operations for that medical company, Aldercrest Dynamics," I said. "Yes, I oversee the operational logistics." Sloane let out a little laugh. It was a light, tinkling sound that was designed to make me feel heavy. "Oh, wow, that sounds so intense. I mean, I could never do a 9 to 5 in a cubicle. My spirit just needs to flow. You know I'm all about creative energy and networking. I feel like operations would just crush my soul." The insult was wrapped in so much cotton candy that you could almost miss the razor blade inside. She had just called my career the career that paid for the steak Cole was about to order a soul-crushing cage for boring people. I waited for Cole to defend me. I waited for him to say, "Actually, Marley runs the whole division," or "Marley just closed a $50 million deal." Instead, Cole laughed. "Yeah, Marley is definitely the worker bee of the family. She loves her spreadsheets." My mother laughed, too. "Oh, Marley has always been serious, even as a baby." She frowned. They were bonding, and the glue they were using to bond was the shared understanding that Marley was uncool, rigid, and ultimately beneath the vibrant, creative life that Sloane represented. I picked up my menu. "Spreadsheets are useful," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "They keep the lights on." "Totally," Sloane said, dismissing me completely. "So, Rick, tell me more about this boat you want to buy." That dinner set the template. Over the next few months, I watched Sloane dismantle the fragile ecosystem of my family and rebuild it with herself at the center. She was obsessed with status. She used words like aesthetic, curated, and high value in normal conversation. But what fascinated me and terrified me was her interrogation technique. It started at Sunday dinners. Sloane would turn her attention to me, not to engage, but to extract data. "So, Marley," she asked once, while pouring herself a third glass of wine, "at your level, do you actually have signing authority? Or do you have to ask a boss for everything?" "I have a budget," I said vaguely. "But how much?" she pressed, leaning forward. Her eyes were predatory. "Can you authorize, say, $100,000, or is it more like $500 for office supplies?" "It depends on the project," I said. "And banking," she continued, ignoring my deflection. "Does Aldercrest use, private client services? I'm thinking of moving my brand's accounts. Do you have a contact at any of the major banks who handles the big money?" I felt Pedro stiffen beside me. He had been watching Sloane with the intensity of a hawk circling a field mouse. He recognized the pattern. He knew that people who have money do not ask these questions at a family dinner. Only people who are hunting for money ask these questions. "I use the standard corporate channels," I lied. Sloane rolled her eyes playfully at Cole. "God, getting information out of your sister is like talking to a CIA agent. Relax. Marley, we're family. We're just talking shop." "Marley is just private," my father said. But his tone was apologetic to Sloane, not defensive of me. He looked at Sloane with a pathetic eagerness, wanting to be part of her shiny world. The climax of the deception came 2 months before the barbecue text. When Cole and Sloane announced they had bought a house, we were all summoned to 4402 Pineview Lane for a tour. It was a nice house, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a large deck in the back. I knew exactly how nice it was, because I had reviewed the inspection report 2 years prior when I purchased it through my LLC, Juniper Ridge Holdings. Cole stood in the center of the living room, holding a bottle of champagne. "It was a war to get this place," he declared, puffing out his chest. "Market is crazy, but you know me. I worked some angles, made a deal with the owner directly. Cash talks, right?" He winked at Dad. Dad beamed. "That's my boy. A homeowner at 32. Proud of you, son." I stood in the corner, holding a glass of warm, sparkling wine. I looked at Cole. I waited for him to catch my eye, to give me a subtle nod of gratitude for keeping his secret. I was the owner he had made a deal with. I was the one who set the rent at 30% below market value so he could afford it. I was the one paying the property taxes. But Cole didn't look at me. He looked at Sloane, and Sloane was looking at the walls. "We are going to gut this place," she announced, sweeping her hand around the room. "This kitchen is tragic. I want marble. I want open concept. I'm thinking we knock down that wall and do a whole farmhouse chic vibe." My stomach tightened. Clause 8 of the lease agreement specifically prohibited structural alterations without written consent from the landlord. "That sounds expensive," I said. It was the first thing I had said in 20 minutes. Sloane whipped her head around. "Marley, don't be such a buzzkill. This is an investment. We are building equity. You have to spend money to make money, but I guess you wouldn't understand the creative side of real estate." "Actually," Pedro said, his voice deep and vibrating with suppressed anger, "structural changes are complicated. You have load-bearing walls. We'll hire people for that." Sloane waved him off. "Cole, baby, show them the backyard. That's where the wedding reception is going to be." As the family shuffled toward the sliding glass doors, Pedro hung back with me. He leaned in close to my ear. "She is going to bankrupt him," Pedro whispered. "And she is lying about her income." I looked up her brand online. "She has 4,000 followers and most of them are bots." "I know," I whispered back. "Why do you let him lie about the house?" Pedro asked. "Why do you let them treat you like a guest in a building you own?" "Because if I tell them," I said, watching my parents fawn over Sloane on the deck, It turns into a transaction. They will hate me for having power over them. Right now, Cole feels like a man. If I tell the truth, he's just a tenant. Pedro shook his head. He is not a tenant. Marley, a tenant pays on time. He is a dependent. The vibe shift happened gradually after that day. Sloan began a systematic campaign to paint me as the enemy of fun. If I asked about the budget for the wedding, I was obsessing over money. If I declined a midweek dinner because I had to work, I was cold and didn't care about family time. She coined a phrase for it, pulling a Marley. "Oh, don't pull a Marley," she would say to Cole when he hesitated to buy a second bottle of wine at dinner. "Live a little." My parents adopted the phrase. It became a family joke, a joke where I was the punchline, I was the dark cloud, Sloan was the sun, and everyone wants to stand in the sun, even if that sun is artificial and burning them alive. But the real danger wasn't the insults. It was what happened 3 days before the "don't come to the BBQ" text. I was at home, reading a book, when Pedro walked into the living room with his laptop. He didn't sit down. He stood in front of me, his face grim. "Marley," he said, "we have a problem." "What is it?" I asked, marking my page. "The shared drive," he said. "The one you set up for your mom last year? The one with the copies of birth certificates, social security cards, and the tax returns you helped her file?" "Yes." "I have alerts set up on the server logs," Pedro said. He is a paranoid man when it comes to digital security, a trait I usually found exhausting but was now about to be thankful for. "Someone tried to access the folder 20 minutes ago. Mom probably forgot her password," I said. "No," Pedro said. "Your mom uses an iPad. This access attempt came from a MacBook Pro, and the IP address does not match your parents' house. It matches the geolocation of the house on Pineview Lane." I went cold. Cole and Sloan lived on Pineview Lane. Sloan used a MacBook Pro. "Did they get in?" I asked. "No," Pedro said. "Two-factor authentication stopped them, but they tried 3 times, and then they tried to use the forgot password feature to reset the login." I stood up. The room felt suddenly airless. This was not just being mean. This was not just excluding me from a barbecue. This was an attempt to access sensitive identity documents. "Why would they need Mom's tax returns?" I asked. Pedro looked at me with a sadness that broke my heart. "They do not need your mom's tax returns. Marley, they need a cosigner, or they need a clean credit profile to attach to something." "Sloan," I whispered. "She is fishing," Pedro said. "She asked about your signing authority. She asked about your banks. Now she is trying to get into the family documents. She is looking for a vein to tap." I took the laptop from him. I looked at the log. Access attempt failed. "Change the passwords," I said. "Lock it down. Remove Mom's access for now until I can talk to her." "You need to confront them," Pedro said. "I can't accuse them of hacking based on an IP address," I said, rubbing my temples. "Mom will say I'm being paranoid. She'll say Cole was just trying to help her find a document. They will spin it. They always spin it." "Then watch them," Pedro warned. "If they cannot get in the front door, they will try a window." 3 days later, the text message arrived. "Don't come to the weekend barbecue." At the time, I thought the text was just Sloane's way of finalizing her social dominance. I thought she just wanted a party where she didn't have to look at my judging face. I thought it was about popularity. I was wrong. As I sat there in my office, remembering the failed login attempt, the pieces clicked together with the terrifying precision of a bear trap snapping shut. They didn't ban me from the barbecue because I made things uncomfortable. They banned me because they needed to do something at that barbecue that they could not do if I was watching. They needed the environment uncontrolled. They needed my parents pliable, happy, and unmonitored. Sloan wasn't just throwing a party. She was staging a crime scene, and by uninviting the only person who would notice the blood, she thought she had cleared the way for the perfect murder of my family's financial future. But she had made one critical error. She assumed that because I was uninvited, I was blind. She forgot that in the house she lived in, on the network she used, the router belonged to me. Saturday mornings at Aldercrest Dynamics were a ghost town. And that was exactly how I liked it. The air conditioning hummed with a different frequency on the weekends, a low, thrumming bass note that vibrated through the floorboards of the 24th floor, without the hundreds of bodies that usually filled the cubicles below. The building felt less like a workplace and more like a fortress of glass and steel. I arrived at 7 o'clock, scanning my badge at the silent turnstiles, the beep echoing sharply in the empty lobby. I was preparing for a critical technology demonstration scheduled for Monday morning with a delegation from Zurich. My desk was a command center of organized chaos, covered in schematics for the new neural interface prototypes and confidentiality agreements that needed final review. I had a cup of black coffee, steam rising in a perfect vertical column, and for the first 3 hours, the world made sense. It was logical. It was binary. It was safe. Then, at 10:15, the intercom on my desk buzzed. I frowned. The only other person in the building who had clearance to buzz my direct line on a Saturday was Jessa, the weekend executive assistant who managed the global logistics desk. I pressed the button. Yes, Jessa. Ms. Perry. Jessa's voice was clipped, professional, but I could hear the tight edge of annoyance she reserved for vendors who tried to upsell us. I have 2 individuals at the front security desk. They do not have appointments. They claim to be family. I stopped typing. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Who are they? A Mr. Cole Perry and a Ms. Sloan Whitaker, Jessa said. And Ms. Perry, I should inform you that the woman is currently live streaming the lobby art installation on her phone and was quite rude to the security officer when he asked her to stop filming. She told him she was here to see the money person. I closed my eyes for a brief second, inhaling the cool, filtered air of my sanctuary. They had come here. They had crossed the line between my personal purgatory and my professional haven. The audacity was almost impressive. Let them up, I said, my voice flat. But Jessa, initiate protocol Delta 4 on their visitor badges. Restricted movement, elevator tracking, and hallway surveillance log, Jessa asked, confirming the code. Correct, and have security monitor the feed, but do not intervene unless I press the panic button. I want everything recorded, audio and video. Understood. Sending them up now. I released the button and stood up. I walked over to the glass wall of my office, looking down at the gray, rain-slicked streets of Portland. I smoothed the front of my blazer. I did not check my hair in the reflection. I was not a sister waiting for a visit. I was an executive dealing with a hostile entity. I heard the elevator chime down the hall. It was a long walk from the elevator bank to my corner office, a corridor lined with frosted glass and million-dollar abstract art. I moved to my desk but did not sit. I stood behind it, placing my hands flat on the mahogany surface, waiting. Through the glass door, I saw them. Sloan was leading. Of course. She was wearing a white monochromatic outfit that looked ridiculous in the gloomy Oregon weather, holding her phone up as if she were documenting an expedition to Mars. Cole was trailing behind her, looking around with wide, nervous eyes. He was wearing a hoodie and jeans, looking like a teenager who had been dragged to a principal's office. I watched Cole's face as they approached. He had never been to my office. We usually met at restaurants or at my parents' house. He thought I was a mid-level manager, someone who managed schedules and ordered toner cartridges. He stopped 5 feet from my door. His eyes locked onto the brushed steel plaque mounted on the wall. Marley Perry, Chief Operations Executive. I saw his mouth open slightly. He blinked. He read it again. The narrative he had built in his head, the one where I was the boring worker bee sister who pushed paper, was colliding violently with the reality of a C-suite title at a multi-billion-dollar biotech firm. He looked at the heavy glass doors, the expanse of the office, the view of the city behind me. He looked terrified. Sloan, however, did not seem to process the title. She just saw the size of the room and the expensive furniture. She pushed the door open without knocking. There she is, Sloan announced, her voice too loud for the acoustic dampening of the room. She lowered her phone but didn't put it away. God, Marley, this building is a maze. The security guard was such a fascist. You really need to talk to HR about the vibe downstairs. Hello, Sloan. Hello, Cole, I said. I did not smile. I did not offer them a seat. Cole shuffled in, avoiding my eyes. Hey, Mar. Nice place. I didn't know you had the corner. There is a lot you do not know, Cole, I said. My gaze shifted to Sloan. To what do I owe the pleasure I am in the middle of preparing for a merger review? Sloan waved her hand dismissively, walking over to the sitting area and dropping a heavy, leather-bound binder onto my desk. It slid across the polished wood and stopped inches from my hand. Business, obviously, Sloan said, flashing a bright, predatory smile. Look, Cole and I were talking, and we realized we have been thinking too small. The barbecue thing. Whatever. That is just family drama. But this is legacy. I looked down at the binder. The cover was glossy, featuring a photo of Sloan in a yoga pose on a beach, with the title, The Whitaker Wellness Collective, a holistic lifestyle brand printed in gold foil. What is this? I asked. It is the future, Sloan declared. She leaned her hands on my desk, invading my personal space. I have a concept for a high-end coaching platform, wellness supplements, mindset training, exclusive retreats. I already have the manufacturers lined up in Southeast Asia. I just need the capital to pull the trigger on the inventory. And you came to me, I said. Well, duh. Sloan laughed. You're the family banker, right? Plus, I looked up this company, Aldercrest. You guys do bio stuff. It aligns perfectly with my brand. Wellness, science, synergy. She used the word synergy like a weapon. How much? I asked. I wanted to hear the number. I wanted to hear the extent of her delusion. Sloan tapped a manicured fingernail on the binder. We have a tiered buy-in, but for a founding partner position, which would give you, 5% equity. We are looking at an initial seed round of $1.8 million. The room went silent. The air conditioning hummed. $1.8 million. She was asking me for nearly $2 million for a pyramid scheme wrapped in yoga pants, less than 24 hours after banning me from a family gathering. I looked at Cole. He was staring at his shoes, his face burning red. He knew, deep down, he knew this was insanity, but he was too weak to stop the train. $1.8 million, I repeated slowly. It is an investment, Marley, Sloan said quickly, sensing the dead air. Conservative projections show a 300% return by year 2, and honestly, it would be good for you. Diversify your portfolio. Plus, it keeps the money in the family. I finally sat down. I picked up the heavy metal pen from my desk, feeling its weight. Let me understand the timeline, I said, my voice low and even. Yesterday afternoon, I received a text message from Cole telling me I was banned from his house. I was told that I make people uncomfortable. I was told my presence ruins the atmosphere. I looked directly into Sloan's eyes. And yet, this morning, less than 16 hours later, you are standing in my office asking for nearly $2 million of my uncomfortable money. If I am not good enough to eat a hamburger in your backyard, Sloan, why on earth do you think I am good enough to be your business partner? Sloan's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, a glitch in the matrix, before she reset it to a look of exaggerated pity. Oh my God, Marley, she sighed, rolling her eyes at Cole. Are you seriously still hung up on that text? It was a joke. We were drinking wine. We were laughing. I was just teasing Cole about how serious you are. I didn't think you would take it so literally. You are so sensitive. Gaslighting. Textbook. It did not read like a joke, I said. And my mother did not like it as a joke. It is just a party, Sloan snapped, her tone hardening. Get over yourself. This is business. This is about Cole's future. Don't you want your brother to be successful, or do you just want to keep him under your thumb so you can feel superior? I want Cole to be successful, I said, looking at my brother. But this is not success. Cole, this is a donation. It is not a donation, Cole blurted out, finally speaking. His voice cracked. Sloan has a plan. She knows people. You always think I can't do anything big. Marley, you always treat me like a kid. I treat you like a kid because you bring your wife to my office to ask for allowance, I said. The words were sharp, precise, intended to cut. I slid the binder back across the desk. It fell off the edge and hit the floor with a loud slap. The answer is no, I said. I will not invest $1 in this venture. Not now. Not ever. Sloan stared at the binder on the floor. Her face underwent a terrifying transformation. The bubbly influencer mask melted away, revealing something cold, hard, and ugly underneath. Her lips thinned into a straight line. You are making a mistake, she said. Her voice was no longer high-pitched. It was low and venomous. I rarely make mistakes with my capital, I replied. That is why I have this office, and that is why you are standing on the other side of the desk. Sloan leaned in again. You think you are safe up here? You think you can just sit in your ivory tower and look down on us? You are going to regret turning your back on your family. Marley, you have no idea what we are capable of when we work together. Is that a threat? I asked. It is a promise, Sloan hissed. She grabbed Cole's arm, her nails digging into his sweatshirt. Come on, Cole, we don't need her. I told you she was a dead end. We will find the funding somewhere else. Someone who actually has vision. Cole looked at me one last time. There was no apology in his eyes. There was only resentment. The resentment of a man who had just been exposed as small in a room that was too big for him. You didn't have to be a bitch about it, Cole muttered. They turned and walked out. I watched them go. I watched Sloan pull out her phone as they reached the hallway, presumably to record a rant about toxic family members for her followers. I waited until the elevator doors dinged and slid shut. I sat there in the silence for a long moment. My heart was beating slightly faster than normal, but my hands were steady. I looked at the spot on my desk where Sloan had placed her hand when she leaned in to threaten me. She had been desperate. You do not come to an office on a Saturday morning and ask for 7 figures unless you are desperate. The text message banning me from the barbecue was not just a power play, it was a preemptive strike to isolate me before they made their move. And since the direct approach, the investment had failed. I knew exactly what was coming next. Sloan had said, "We will find the funding somewhere else." But they didn't have collateral. They didn't have credit. The only asset they had access to was a house they didn't own and a family name that shared a credit history with me. I picked up my phone and dialed the internal security line. "Jessa," I said when she answered. "Yes, Ms. Perry. They have exited the building. The security officer reported that the woman kicked a planter on her way out. Secure the footage," I said. "Save it to my private server. Do not delete it. And Jessa." "Yes. Flag any incoming external emails from their domain to the legal department. I have a feeling this is not over." "Done." I hung up. I looked at the clock. It was 11:30. The barbecue was scheduled to start at 1 o'clock. They were going back to the house, my house, and tonight, surrounded by burgers and beer and my oblivious parents. They were going to try to burn me down. Sloane's threat hung in the air. "You have no idea what we are capable of." She was wrong. I knew exactly what they were capable of. They were capable of theft. I opened my laptop and pulled up my banking interface. I moved the authentication token to the center of my desk. I was not going to the barbecue, but I was about to have a very busy Saturday night. If they wanted a war, they had just handed the general the launch codes. The time was 9:42 at night. The barbecue at the house on Pineview Lane would have been winding down. I imagined they were sitting around the fire pit I had paid to install last autumn, perhaps toasting marshmallows, perhaps toasting to their narrow escape from my judgment. In my apartment in the Pearl District, the atmosphere was hermetically sealed against the chaos of the world. Pedro was sitting in the leather armchair by the window, reading a structural engineering journal. I was reviewing the final logistics for Monday's delegation from Zurich. Then, my phone lit up. It was not a text message. It was a push notification from the identity protection service I subscribed to, a service that usually only emailed me once a month to tell me everything was fine. Tonight, the banner on my lock screen was red. Alert new credit inquiry detected. Alert new loan application. Small Business Administration. I stared at the screen. The blood in my veins seemed to drop 10 degrees. I did not panic. Panic is for people who do not understand systems. I swiped the notification to open the app. The biometric scanner read my face, and the details populated the screen in high-contrast black and white. An application had been submitted 11 minutes ago to a regional lender. The type of loan was a commercial startup line of credit. The principal amount requested was $520,000. I clicked on the Application Details tab. Primary applicant, Marley Ann Perry. Social Security number X-XX-9821. Date of birth, November 12, 1986. Address 204 Maplewood Drive, Salem, Oregon. I stopped breathing for a moment. Maplewood Drive was my parents' house. I had not lived there for 20 years, but it was the address on my old birth certificate, the address on my old bank accounts from high school, the address where my parents kept a fireproof box with all the family's important papers. My eyes moved down the screen to the next line. Co-applicant, Cole Thomas Perry. The phone felt heavy in my hand, like a piece of lead. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not Sloan asking for an investment and getting rejected. This was a felony. Pedro, I said. My voice was so quiet it barely registered over the hum of the refrigerator. Pedro looked up immediately. He saw my face. He dropped his magazine and crossed the room in 2 strides. He did not ask what was wrong. He simply took the phone from my hand and looked at the screen. His jaw tightened. He read the amount. He read the names. $520,000, Pedro said, pronouncing every syllable with a dangerous precision. They are trying to leverage your credit score to secure a loan for his business because he cannot get approved for a bus pass on his own. They use the Maplewood address, I said, my mind racing through the implications. That means they used the documents in Mom's safe. They forged my signature, or they checked a box saying I was present. Do not speculate, Pedro said, his voice dropping into the command tone he used on construction sites when a beam was unstable. Execute the kill switch, now. He handed the phone back to me. I exited the monitoring app and opened my primary banking portal. My fingers flew across the glass. I did not feel like a sister anymore. I felt like a sysadmin responding to a hostile intrusion. Select all accounts. Action freeze. Reason identity theft/fraud. I tapped confirm. The screen loaded for a terrifying 3 seconds, and then a green checkmark appeared. Credit Bureau lock active, TransUnion locked, Equifax locked, Experian locked. It is locked, I said. Call Miles, Pedro ordered. Get a human on the line. Make sure they flag the inquiry as fraudulent before the automated underwriting system approves it. I dialed Miles Grant, my relationship manager at the private bank. It was Saturday night, but Miles managed portfolios that required 24-hour access. He answered on the second ring. Marley. Miles sounded alert. No background noise. Everything okay? I saw a ping on your file regarding a credit pull. It was not me. Miles, I said. I am staring at a loan application for $520,000. I need you to kill it. I need you to mark it as fraud. Hard flag. Understood, Miles said. I could hear the rapid clicking of a keyboard on his end. I am looking at the metadata now. The application came through an online portal. The IP address. Let me see. I waited. The IP address resolves to a residential node in Pineview Lane, Miles said. Is that you? No, I said. That is the location of a party I was explicitly banned from attending. Okay, Miles said. His tone shifted from professional to protective. I have marked the application as unauthorized/identity theft. The system will automatically reject it within 60 seconds. It will also send a notification to the applicant email, which is listed here as coleperrybusiness@gmail.com, stating that the application was denied due to a security freeze by the primary holder. Thank you, Miles, I said. Marley, Miles added, his voice lowering, because of the amount, and because they used your social security number, the bank's fraud department is legally required to generate a suspicious activity report. This goes to federal regulators. If you want to stop this from becoming a criminal matter, you have about 5 minutes to tell me to classify it as a clerical error instead of fraud. I looked at Pedro. He was watching me, his arms crossed. He did not tell me what to do. He let me choose. I thought about the text message. Don't come to the weekend barbecue. I thought about Sloan standing in my office, threatening me. I thought about Cole, willing to saddle me with $500,000 of debt for a business that didn't exist. All while smiling and eating a burger at a party he knew I was paying for. It is not an error, Miles, I said. File the report. Copy that, Miles said. It is filed. Good luck. Marley? I hung up. 30 seconds later, the world exploded. My phone began to buzz incessantly. It skittered across the coffee table like a dying insect. Incoming call Cole Perry. Incoming call Mom. Incoming call Cole Perry. Incoming call Dad. I did not answer. I picked up the phone and set it to Do Not Disturb. But I kept the screen active. I opened the family group chat. Cole? WTF Marley Cole. Did you just block the loan, Cole? We were approved. It said approved pending verification, and then it just turned red. Why did you do that, Mom? Marley? Pick up the phone. Cole is crying. He says you ruined his funding. Dad, Marley. This is too far. We can talk about this. Unlock the credit. He needs this for the timeline. I watched the messages roll in. They were frantic. They were terrified. But mostly, they were furious. Not one of them asked if I was okay. Not one of them apologized for stealing my identity. They were only angry that I had caught them. They think I am the villain, I said, showing the screen to Pedro. Look at this. They are blaming me for stopping them from robbing me. Do not reply, Pedro said. Screenshot, everything. I navigated to the folder I had created earlier. I renamed it. Project Eviction became evidence, _criminal. I took screenshots of the loan alert. I took screenshots of the address match. I took screenshots of Cole's admission in the text, where he asked why I blocked the loan, implying he knew exactly what it was. Then, Sloan entered the chat. Sloan, you are such a petty bitch. Marley, you have millions. You wouldn't even miss this. We were going to pay you back out of the first quarter profits. Sloan, we didn't even need you to sign anything. Mom handled the paperwork part, so you wouldn't be bothered. You just had to sit there and do nothing, and you couldn't even do that. I froze. My thumb hovered over the volume button to take the screenshot. Mom handled the paperwork part. The air left my lungs. My mother, Darlene. The woman who taught me to tie my shoes. The woman who, despite her favoritism, I had always believed possessed a basic moral compass. She had given them my documents. She had opened the fireproof box, taken out my social security card, or my old tax returns, and handed them to Sloan. She had facilitated the theft of her own daughter's identity to help her son play businessman. Did you see that? I whispered. Pedro read the message. His face went dark. She just confessed to conspiracy to commit wire fraud, in writing. Mom gave them my info, I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow to the stomach. She knew. They all knew. The barbecue, they wanted me away so they could celebrate the approval without me asking questions. Marley, Pedro said, gripping my shoulders. Listen to me. They are not your family right now. They are a group of individuals attempting to defraud you. You need to treat them as such. If you respond emotionally, they will manipulate you. They will say it was for the family. They will say you are selfish. I know, I said. My voice was shaking, but my resolve was hardening into something diamond sharp. I am not going to respond. I took the screenshot of Sloane's message, Then I backed up the entire chat history to the cloud. "Call Avery," I said. Avery Lang was my corporate counsel, a shark in a tailored suit who specialized in contract law and asset protection. It was nearly 10 o'clock on a Saturday, but Avery was on retainer for exactly this kind of nightmare. She answered on the first ring. "Marley, is the Zurich deal in trouble?" "No," I said. "The Zurich deal is fine. My personal life is the crime scene." I gave her the facts. I spoke in bullet points. Unauthorized credit inquiry for $520,000. Co-applicant is my brother. Address used is my parents' home. Admissibility of text messages confirming knowledge and participation by my mother and sister-in-law. The fact that the loan application originated from a property owned by my LLC. Avery listened without interrupting. I could hear the scratch of a pen on paper. "Okay," Avery said. Her voice was devoid of pity, which was exactly what I needed. "We have 2 tracks here. Marley, track 1 is criminal, identity theft, wire fraud, conspiracy. If we push this, your brother and possibly your mother are looking at federal charges. The bank has already filed the SAR, so the investigation is automated. You just need to cooperate." "And track 2, I asked. "Track 2 is civil and immediate asset protection," Avery said. "You said the fraud originated from the Pineview Lane address, the one owned by Juniper Ridge Holdings." "Yes. That is a violation of the lease agreement," Avery said. "Clause 14, Section C, illegal activity conducted on the premises. We can trigger an immediate eviction notice, not 30 days, 3 days, with a notice to quit for cause." "Do it," I said. "And Marley," Avery added, "I can draft a cease and desist regarding the harassment, but I need to know, are you prepared to pull the trigger if I file these papers on Monday morning? There is no going back. This destroys the relationship, permanently." I looked at the phone screen. My father had just sent a text. "Dad, Marley. Stop being dramatic. Unfreeze the credit. We promised Sloan, don't make me come down there. He was threatening me. He was threatening to come to my home to force me to let them rob me." "Avery," I said into the phone. "The relationship was destroyed the moment they typed my social security number into that application. File the papers. I want the eviction notice ready for service by tomorrow morning." "Tomorrow is Sunday," Avery noted. "I will serve it myself," I said. "Prepare the package and email it to me. I will print it." "Understood," Avery said. "I will also prepare a formal affidavit for you to sign regarding the identity theft. Do not speak to them. Do not answer the phone. Let the bank and the lawyers do the talking." "Understood," I said. I hung up the phone. The buzzing had stopped, replaced by a sullen silence from the group chat. They were regrouping. They were probably telling themselves that I would calm down by morning. They were probably telling themselves that I always caved, that I always fixed it. I walked over to the printer in my home office. I checked the paper tray. It was full. Pedro came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. He rested his chin on my shoulder. He felt solid, real, the only truthful thing in my life. "You are safe," he said. "I know," I said, "but they are not." I looked at the folder on my computer screen labeled Evidence_Criminal. Inside were the screenshots that proved my mother chose a thief over her daughter, and my brother chose easy money over his sister. I was done being the safety net. I was done being the bank. "Pedro," I said, "Tomorrow morning, we are going to the barbecue." "I thought we were banned," Pedro said. "Marley Perry is banned," I corrected him. "But the landlord has the right to inspect the property upon suspicion of illegal activity." I watched the printer verify its connection. "And I think," I added, a cold calm settling over me, "that I have more than enough suspicion." The adrenaline from stopping the loan application had faded, replaced by a cold, clinical focus. It was now 1 a.m. on Sunday. The rain outside had stopped, leaving a heavy silence over the city. I was sitting at my dining table, which was covered in the digital debris of my defense strategy laptops, tablets, and a printer that was still warm. Pedro walked into the room. He was not carrying a device. He was carrying a thick manila envelope. It looked old school, analog, and out of place in our high-tech household. He placed it in front of me with a thud that sounded heavy, like a judge's gavel. "I did not want to show you this unless it became necessary," Pedro said. Sitting opposite me, I thought maybe I was being too protective. I thought maybe I was wrong about her. "About Sloane?" I asked, my hand resting on the envelope. "About Sloane," he confirmed. 3 weeks after you met her, when she started asking about your banking connections, I ran a background check, not a Google search, a comprehensive public records search, civil courts, county clerks, small claims. I looked at him, my husband, the man who usually let me handle the logistics, had been running a counterintelligence operation without saying a word. "Open it," he said. I slid the papers out. It was a timeline of chaos. The first page was a summary of addresses. Sloane Whitaker, or Sloane Miller, as she was known 4 years ago, had moved 5 times in 6 years. Phoenix, Arizona, Henderson, Nevada, Boise, Idaho. And now, Portland, Oregon. "She moves fast," I murmured. "She moves when the eviction notices hit," Pedro said, pointing to the second page. It was a printout of a civil judgment from Clark County, Nevada, property management versus Sloane Miller, judgment for plaintiff, $7,400 in unpaid rent and damages. 2 months later, another judgment in Idaho, quick cash payday loans, versus Sloane Whitaker, default judgment for $2,000. "She changes her last name slightly," Pedro explained. "Miller was her stepfather's name. Whitaker is her biological father's name. She rotates them to refresh her credit profile until the systems catch up." I turned the page. The numbers were small, the kind of debts that suggest a chaotic, unmanaged life, unpaid utility bills, a repossessed Honda Civic, a collections account from a high-end furniture rental company, but then I saw the police report. It was from Phoenix, 5 years ago. The charge was identity theft and credit card fraud. The status was dismissed/withdrawn by victim. "Read the narrative," Pedro said. I scanned the officer's notes. The complainant, a woman named Tessa Rowland, alleged that her roommate, Sloane Miller, had opened 3 credit cards in Tessa's name and maxed them out on designer clothing and business inventory for an essential oil scheme. The total fraud was $18,000. "Why was it dismissed?" I asked. "Look at the addendum," Pedro said. I read the bottom note. "Victim requests to withdraw charges. States that the suspect has agreed to a payment plan and victim wishes to avoid public court proceedings due to potential employment impact." "She blackmailed her," I said, the realization hitting me. Sloane probably threatened to ruin Tessa's reputation if she pursued the criminal case. That is why she keeps talking about brand and image. She knows that for professional women, reputation is a hostage you can take. "I found Tessa," Pedro said quietly. "She lives in Seattle now. I messaged her an hour ago on LinkedIn. I told her that my sister-in-law was about to sign a business deal with Sloane, and I wanted a reference." "Did she reply?" "She called me immediately," Pedro said. "She is waiting on the other line. She wants to talk to you." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. I picked up Pedro's phone. The call was active, muted. I unmuted it and put it on speaker. "Hello, this is Marley Perry." "Don't sign it," the voice on the other end said instantly. It was a woman's voice, shaky but urgent. "I don't know who you are, but don't sign anything she gives you. Not a lease, not a loan, not a partnership agreement." "I am not signing," I said. "My name is Marley. I am Cole Perry's sister. Sloane is currently engaged to my brother." There was a long silence on the line. Then, a heavy sigh. "Oh God, the brother. She always finds a guy with a soft family. She likes the ones who want to be heroes." "Tessa," I said, keeping my voice steady. "She just tried to take out a commercial loan in my name, $520,000. She used my brother as a co-signer." "She did that to me," Tessa said. "Well, not that much money, but the pattern is the same. She creates a crisis. She says she needs bridge capital for her brand. Then she says she handled the paperwork and you just need to verify a code. Next thing you know, you have maxed out cards. When I caught her, she told everyone at our workplace that I was a drug addict and that she had been paying my debts. She threatened to post proof online if I went to the police. I was up for a promotion. I couldn't risk the scandal. I dropped the charges. I am not going to drop the charges, I said. Good, Tessa said, because I am done being afraid of her. If you need a statement, if you need an affidavit saying that this is her modus operandi, I will write it. I still have the old bank statements. I still have her emails apologizing and promising to pay me back. I need everything, I said. Tonight. You will have it, Tessa said. Stop her, please. We ended the call. I looked at Pedro. He had been right all along. While I was worrying about being liked, he was worrying about being robbed. There is more, Pedro said. He took the phone back and opened the browser. While you were talking to Tessa, I logged into the property management portal for the Pineview Lane house. I wanted to check if there were any maintenance requests we missed. And there are no maintenance requests, Pedro said. But there is a pending administrative request. It was submitted yesterday afternoon. He turned the screen toward me. Request type transfer of utility responsibility. New account holder Whitaker Wellness, LLC. Status pending owner approval. She is trying to put the utilities in her LLC's name, I said. It is a residency trap, Pedro explained. In Oregon, if a business establishes utility accounts and pays them for 30 days, it creates a de facto commercial tenancy. It makes eviction 10 times harder. She is not just trying to steal money. Marley, she is trying to steal the house. She wants to convert the residential lease into a commercial squatter situation. I felt a surge of nausea. It was so calculated. The barbecue ban was to keep me away so I wouldn't see any mail that might have come to the house. The loan was to fund the legal battle she knew was coming. The utility switch was to dig in her heels. She is trying to checkmate me with my own property, I said. We need to send this to Avery, Pedro said. I compiled the files, Pedro's dossier on her past judgments, the notes from my call with Tessa, and the screenshot of the utility transfer request. I emailed them to Avery Lang with the subject line, Evidence Supplement, Urgent. Avery replied 12 minutes later. She was awake. Marley, I have reviewed the new data. This changes the landscape. The timing of the loan application less than 6 hours after you rejected her face-to-face investment request, combined with the attempt to seize utility control, establishes predatory intent. This is not just fraud. It is financial abuse. I am drafting a criminal complaint to accompany the police report. Also, the affidavit from Ms. Rowland will be critical to establish a pattern of behavior. Get it signed and notarized as soon as possible. I leaned back in my chair. My eyes were burning. I had the what and the who, but I was still missing the how. Pedro, I said, the loan application, the bank said it came from the Pineview IP address, but Miles said they used an email address for the confirmation. Yes, Pedro said. coleperrybusiness@gmail.com. No, I corrected him. That was the email for the rejection notification, but the application itself requires a primary applicant email for identity verification. Miles mentioned it briefly, but I didn't catch it. I opened the screenshot I had taken of the loan alert on my phone. I zoomed in on the metadata field at the bottom. Applicant email, darleneperry88@gmail.com. I stared at it. My mother's email address was darleneperry8@gmail.com. Just the number 8, 1-8. This email had 2 8s. Look at this, I said, pointing at the screen. It is a spoof. Pedro leaned in. It looks exactly like your mom's email at a glance, but it is a new account. Why would they do that? I asked. Why not just use mom's real email? Because, Pedro said, his voice dropping. If they use the real email, the bank would send a verification code to your mom's iPad, and even if your mom is involved, she might be too incompetent to forward it quickly enough. Or she might accidentally delete it. By creating a fake email that looks like hers, They control the verification loop. They can approve the identity check themselves without needing to physically take the iPad from her hands. But, I said, my mind racing. To set up that email and link it to the application, they needed my mother's personal information, her exact date of birth, her mother's maiden name, the answers to her security questions. Marley, Pedro said gently, your mom gave them the answers. Or, I said, a darker thought forming. Sloan did not just ask. Sloan has been helping Mom with her technology for months. Remember Mom said Sloan showed her how to use cloud storage. Sloan has the passwords. It fits, Pedro said. Sloan harvests the data from your mom, creates the spoof email to bypass the security checks, and submits the application. Cole co-signs to make it look legitimate. It is a closed loop. They didn't need you. They didn't even need Mom to be awake. They just needed her data. It was brilliant. It was evil. And it was sloppy. One character, I said. They added one number 8. That is the thread that unravels the whole sweater. I stood up. I walked to the window and looked out at the city. The sun would be coming up in 3 hours. The barbecue was today. I have everything, I said. I have the past judgments. I have the witness. I have the utility fraud. I have the email spoofing. What is the play? Pedro asked. Avery is preparing the eviction notice. I said, but serving papers is just paper. They will tear it up. They will lie to the family. They will say I am being vindictive. I turned back to Pedro. I am not just going to serve them, I said. I am going to hold a board meeting. The barbecue is at 1 o'clock. The family will be there. The neighbors will be there. You are going to do this in public? Pedro asked. They made it public when they banned me in the group chat. I said, they made it public when they submitted a loan application that will trigger a federal investigation. I am done hiding their secrets to save their dignity. If they want to play house in my property, they are going to follow the landlord's rules. I went to the printer. I printed 3 copies of the entire dossier. The sound of the printer rhythmically spitting out pages was the only sound in the room. Thwack, thwack, thwack. It sounded like a gavel coming down. Over and over again. Pedro, I said, get some sleep. We leave at 12:30. And you? I have one more email to write, I said. To the Water Bureau. I need to flag the account for fraud so the transfer doesn't go through on Monday morning. I sat back down. The keyboard felt cold under my fingers. I was no longer the hurt sister. I was the chief operations executive of my own life, and I was about to execute a hostile takeover of the truth. The sun had barely risen over the Willamette River on Sunday morning when the digital assault began. It did not start with a scream. It started with a series of well-curated Instagram stories. I was awake, drinking coffee in my kitchen, monitoring the situation on my iPad. Sloan had blocked me, of course. She was not stupid enough to let me see her posts directly, but she had forgotten that I had access to the internet, and I had instructed a junior analyst at a reputation management firm, a favor I called in at 3 a.m. to mirror her activity and send me a report every hour. The report sat open on my screen. Sloan had posted a photo of herself looking pensive, staring out a window with a cup of herbal tea. The caption was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive vague booking, the kind that thrives in the toxic ecosystem of suburban social media. Healing from toxic family dynamics is the hardest journey, she wrote. It is so painful when people who are supposed to support you turn out to be controlling narcissists. Money really does reveal character. Just because someone has a big job in a glass tower does not mean they have a heart. Choose kindness over status. Always. Hashtag toxic family. Hashtag narcissistic abuse. Hashtag healing journey. Hashtag new beginnings. She did not name me. She did not name Aldercrest Dynamics, but she dropped enough breadcrumbs for anyone who knew us to follow the trail. Big job. Glass tower. Controlling. I watched the comments roll in. My cousins. My aunts. Friends of the family, people who had eaten food I paid for at Christmas were leaving supportive emojis. So true. Babe, stay strong. You don't need that negative energy. They were buying the narrative. In Sloane's story, she was the plucky underdog fighting for her happiness, and I was the cold, rich villainess trying to crush her spirit with my wallet. I felt a flash of irritation, hot and sharp, but I pushed it down. This was bait. She wanted me to comment. She wanted me to text her in a rage so she could screenshot it and post, "See the abuse continues." I did not take the bait. I took a sip of coffee. Then, my work phone rang. It was Sunday morning. The only person who called my work line on a Sunday was the CEO or the crisis management team. I looked at the caller ID. Renee Voss, VP of Corporate Communications. My stomach dropped. Renee was not a friend. She was a professional damage controller who ensured that Aldercrest Dynamics maintained a pristine image for our investors. If Renee was calling me at 7 in the morning, the contagion had breached the containment zone. "Marley," Renee said. Her voice was brisk, devoid of weekend pleasantries. "I am sorry to disturb you, but we have a situation regarding the general inquiry inbox." "What kind of situation?" I asked, though I already knew. "We received an email at 6:15 this morning," Renee said. The sender used an anonymous Proton Mail account, but they identified themselves as a concerned relative. The subject line was "Mental Stability Concerns Regarding Executive Leadership." I closed my eyes. The sheer malice of it took my breath away. This was not just a family spat. This was a tactical strike at my livelihood. "Read it to me." "Renee," I said. "It is short," Renee said. "It claims that you are currently undergoing a severe mental health crisis, that you are paranoid, and that you have been making irrational financial decisions that could expose the company to liability. It suggests that we and I, quote, audit her recent contracts before she destroys the company like she is destroying her family. It is signed. A family member who wants to help." Silence hung on the line. "Marley," Renee continued, her voice softening slightly. "Obviously, we get crank emails all the time, but this one mentions specific details about your schedule. It mentions the Zurich delegation tomorrow. That makes it a security concern." "It is retaliation," I said clearly. "I am currently in the process of preventing a family member from committing commercial identity theft against me. They are trying to discredit me before I can file legal charges." "Okay," Renee said. I could hear the relief in her voice. She needed a logical explanation. And extortion was a language corporate understood. That is what I needed to hear. "Do you want legal involved?" "No," I said. "Not yet. But Renee, do not delete that email." "Standard protocol," Renee said. "I have already archived the headers, the timestamp, and the server log. It is preserved. If you need it for a civil suit, it is yours." "Thank you," I said. "I will see you tomorrow. The Zurich deal proceeds as planned." "Good luck." "Marley." I hung up. My hand was shaking, not from fear, but from a cold, simmering rage. Sloane thought she knew what she was doing. She thought she was playing a game of mean girls. She did not realize that by sending that email, she had just handed me the ammunition to destroy her in a court of law. She had attacked my professional reputation in the state of Oregon. That was grounds for a defamation suit with damages that would garnish her wages for the rest of her life. "They escalated," Pedro said from the doorway. He was dressed, holding his car keys. "We need to go to the office. I need to print the affidavit from Tessa on the secure laser printer. The toner here is low." "Let's go," I said. We drove to Aldercrest in silence. The city was waking up, oblivious to the war being fought in the invisible data streams above it. When we arrived at the building, I badged us in. The lobby was empty, a cavern of marble and glass. I was at the security desk, signing Pedro in as a visitor. When I saw the movement at the revolving doors, a woman was pressing her face against the glass. She was frantically waving her hands. It was my mother. I froze. "How does she know I am here?" "Your car," Pedro said. "She knows your car. She probably drove by your apartment, didn't see it, and came here. She is desperate." I looked at the security guard. A young man named David. He looked confused. "Ms. Perry, do you know her?" "Yes," I said. "Let her in, David, but do not let her pass the turnstiles. Keep her in the lobby area." David hit the button. The doors spun, and Darlene Perry stumbled into the lobby. She looked terrible. Her hair was uncombed. She was wearing a raincoat over pajamas. She looked small, frail, and terrified. For a second, my heart lurched. This was my mother, the woman who used to make me soup when I was sick. But then I remembered the email, Darlene Perry, 88. I remembered the text. Mom handled the paperwork. I walked toward her, stopping 10 feet away. I did not cross the invisible line of the security barrier. "Marley," she cried out, her voice echoing off the high ceilings. "Oh, thank God. I have been calling and calling. Why won't you answer?" "I am working." "Mother," I said. My voice was calm, projected for the security cameras that I knew were recording every frame. "You have to stop this," she sobbed. Rushing toward the barrier, she grabbed the metal railing. "The bank sent an email to Cole. They said it was fraud. They said they were reporting it to the government. Marley, you have to call them back. You have to tell them it was a mistake." "It was not a mistake," I said. "It was a crime. It is family," she screamed. The sound was shrill, desperate. "He is your brother. He just made a mistake with the forms. He didn't mean to hurt you. He just needed a start. Why are you being so cruel?" "Cruel?" I repeated. "Mother, you gave them my social security number. You gave them the answers to my security questions. You helped them impersonate me." She flinched. "I didn't think it would be a big deal. Sloan said it was just a formality. She said you would be proud to help. We were going to surprise you with a success. You were going to surprise me with $500,000 in debt," I said. "Please," she begged, tears streaming down her face. "Sloan is going crazy. She is threatening to leave him. Cole is falling apart. If the police come, Marley, it will kill your father. You know his heart is weak. Do you want to kill your father?" It was the ultimate weapon, the guilt card, the "if you protect yourself, you are hurting us" maneuver. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had ignored my math trophy to bandage a scraped knee. I looked at the woman who had just tried to gaslight me in the lobby of the company where I commanded respect from hundreds of people. "This is not about the barbecue anymore," I said, my voice cutting through her sobbing. "This is not about my feelings. This is about the fact that you and your son committed a federal crime. I cannot stop the bank. Mother, the suspicious activity report is automatic. The investigation has already started. You can fix it," she insisted. "You are powerful. You know people make it go away." "I will not," I said. "And I want you to listen to me very carefully. Sloan sent an email to my company this morning claiming I was mentally unstable. She tried to get me fired." My mother blinked. She was just upset. She didn't mean it. "You are defending the person who tried to destroy my career," I said. "Go home. Mother, go home and tell Cole that I am not coming to the barbecue to eat. I am coming to inspect my property. Marley, please." "David," I said to the guard, "escort her out." "Ms. Perry," David said, stepping forward gently. "Ma'am, you need to leave." My mother looked at me one last time. There was no love in her eyes. There was only the shock of a parent who realizes that the child they viewed as a tool has become a weapon. She turned and let David guide her out into the rain. I stood there for a moment, watching her go. I felt hollowed out. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was a text from my father. "Dad, I heard you are at the office. Mom is hysterical. Look, Marley, you do what you have to do. Be mad. Scream at us. Cut us off. But do not let the police into the house. Do not give them the records. If you give them the records, you are dead to me." I stared at the screen. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't ask if my credit was safe. He didn't apologize for his wife's betrayal. His only concern was the police. His only concern was the shame. He was terrified that the neighbors would see a squad car in the driveway of the nice family. He was willing to sacrifice my financial future to protect his reputation. "You are dead to me," I whispered, reading his words. "No, Dad. You are just a tenant." I turned to Pedro. He was standing by the elevator, holding the printed affidavit from Tessa. He had heard everything. "Are you okay?" he asked. "No," I said, "but I am ready. What do we do now?" "We follow the protocol," I said. "From this moment on, we do not speak to them without a recording. We do not answer their texts. We do not engage in emotional debates." I took the affidavit from him. It was warm from the printer. It was a heavy document, dense with the truth about Sloane's history of predation. "Renee has the email logs," I said. "We have the bank fraud alerts. We have the witness statement. We have the lease agreement. We have the nuclear codes," Pedro said. "The barbecue starts in 2 hours," I said. "They think I am hiding in here, crying. They think Mom's scene in the lobby rattled me. They think Dad's threat scared me." I walked toward the exit, my heels clicking rhythmically on the marble floor. "They are about to find out," I said, "that the only thing they succeeded in doing was clearing my schedule so I could focus entirely on destroying them." I pushed through the revolving doors. Stepping out into the gray Sunday light, the air was crisp. It smelled of rain and ozone. It smelled like the calm before the artillery barrage. The drive back from the office to my apartment was a tactical retreat, designed solely to gather munitions. By the time Pedro and I walked through our front door, the atmosphere had shifted from defensive panic to the cold, rhythmic precision of a military operation. My kitchen table was no longer a place for meals. It was a forward command post. I dialed Avery Lang. It was 11 o'clock in the morning. "Status," I said, putting the phone on speaker so Pedro could hear, while he organized the physical evidence. "The package is complete," Avery's voice came through, sharp and devoid of the Sunday morning grogginess that afflicted normal people. "I have drafted 3 distinct documents. First is the formal notice of identity theft and fraudulent activity, which includes the affidavit you signed and the suspicious activity report reference number from the bank. This establishes the predicate crime." "Good," I said. "Next. Second is the demand for preservation of evidence sent to Cole and Sloane via email and certified mail. It puts them on notice that deleting texts, emails, or destroying digital devices will be considered spoliation of evidence in a federal investigation. If Sloane deletes those Instagram stories or wipes her laptop, she goes to jail for obstruction." "And the house?" I asked. This was the linchpin. This was the lever that would move the world. "That is the third document," Avery said. "I have prepared a notice to quit for cause under the Oregon Residential Landlord and Tenant Act. Specifically, we are citing the clause regarding the use of the premises for illegal activities. The submission of a fraudulent loan application from the property's IP address constitutes a breach of the lease. You have the right to terminate the tenancy with 24 hours notice in extreme cases. But to be safe, I have drafted a 72-hour unconditional vacate order." 72 hours, I repeated. "That gives them until Wednesday." "Correct. But Marley," Avery paused, "you need to understand the optics. You are evicting your brother and his fiancée 3 days after they announce their business launch. They will spin this. They will say you are retaliating because they didn't invite you to a party. Let them spin," I said. "I am not looking for likes on Facebook. I am looking for possession of my asset." "I have also included the ownership deed for Juniper Ridge Holdings," Avery added, "just in case they have forgotten who actually signs the checks." "They have not forgotten," I said. "They just never knew. They think Juniper Ridge is a faceless corporation. They are about to meet the CEO." I hung up and turned to the printer. It was already whirring, spitting out the documents Avery had securely transferred. I watched the pages slide into the tray. They were warm. They smelled of toner and finality. I initiated the triplicate protocol. In corporate operations, you never walk into a hostile meeting with a single copy of your data. If you drop it, lose it, or if someone rips it out of your hands, you are disarmed. I assembled 3 identical dossiers. Binder 1 was black. This was the presentation copy. It was designed to be opened, read, and left on the table, It contained the lease agreement, the loan fraud alert, the IP address match, and the email spoofing evidence. Binder 2 was read. This was the resilience copy. I placed this in my satchel, hidden in the inner laptop compartment. If Binder 1 was destroyed or thrown into the barbecue grill, which was a non-zero probability given Sloane's temper, Binder 2 would remain pristine. Binder 3 was a sealed envelope. I wrote law enforcement/legal counsel on the front in thick marker. This contained the unredacted originals, the notarized affidavit from Tessa, and the raw server logs. This was not for show. This was the chain of custody. "Pedro," I said, "check the timestamps on the email prints. Make sure they match the bank alerts exactly." Pedro was scanning the documents with the eye of a structural engineer looking for hairline fractures. "The timestamps align. The loan application was hit at 9:31. The confirmation email to the spoofed account arrived at 9:32. The rejection notice hit your phone at 9:42. The timeline is unbreakable." He looked up. "I also printed the statement from Tessa." "Do we need it?" I asked. "The loan fraud is enough." "The loan fraud proves they are criminals," Pedro said. "But Tessa's statement proves they are predators. It proves that this was not a desperate mistake by a struggling couple. It proves that Sloane has a business model. It changes the narrative from Cole made a mistake to Cole is being handled." "You want to give him an out," I observed. "I want to destroy his excuse," Pedro corrected me. "He will try to say he was duped. Tessa's statement proves he should have known better if he had done a basic Google search on the woman he is marrying." I nodded. "Include it?" My phone buzzed again. It was Renee Voss from Corporate Communications. "Marley, just a heads up. We have set up a social media listening post. We are seeing a few more vague comments from Sloane's account about corporate bullies. We are not engaging. We are archiving. Every post she makes adds to the defamation file. Stay silent. Let her dig." "Understood," I typed back. "Silence is the strategy." I looked at the clock. It was 12:15. The barbecue started at 1. I sat down for a moment to breathe. The adrenaline was making my hands cold. I needed to center myself. I needed to remember why I was doing this. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the betrayal of the fundamental contract of family. I unlocked my phone and opened my messages. I scrolled down to a text thread with Cole. I had missed it earlier in the chaos of the morning. Or perhaps I had seen it and suppressed it. It had come in at 3:45 in the morning, right in the middle of the night, likely when Cole couldn't sleep because he knew the loan had been blocked. I opened it now. It was the only crack in the armor I had seen from him. "Cole Marr, are you awake? Look, I don't know what happened with the bank." Sloane handed me the tablet and said we just needed to verify the address for the LLC. She said she handled the paperwork with Mom to save time. I didn't read the fine print. Okay, I just signed where she pointed. I was drinking. I didn't know it was for 500,000. I thought it was for like 50. But you didn't have to nuke it. You embarrassed Sloane. She's crying. She says you hate us. Why do you always have to be right? I read it 3 times. I didn't read the fine print. I just signed where she pointed. You didn't have to nuke it. He was admitting to negligence. He was admitting that he signed legal documents without reading them, putting my credit and his own future at risk because he was too lazy or too cowed to ask questions. But the worst part was the end, even in his confession. Even when he admitted he didn't know the amount. He blamed me. He blamed me for nuking a fraud. He blamed me for Sloane's tears. He was a victim of Sloane. Yes, she had manipulated him, but he was also a volunteer. He chose to be blind because seeing the truth would require him to stand up to her. He chose to sign because it was easier than asking hard questions. "He is not innocent," I said to the empty room. "He is an accomplice by cowardice." I showed the text to Pedro. "That is your smoking gun," Pedro said. "He admits he didn't know the amount, which means the application was fraudulent on its face. But he also admits he signed it. He cannot claim he was hacked. He is going to try to play the 'I was drunk' card," I said. "It won't hold up in court, and it certainly won't hold up with me." I stood up and grabbed the black binder. I smoothed my blazer. I had chosen a dark navy suit, sharp and tailored. I was not dressing for a barbecue. I was dressing for a board meeting. "The car is ready," Pedro said. "I checked the traffic. It is a 20-minute drive to Pineview Lane." "Let's go," I said. We walked out to the parking garage. The rain had stopped, but the sky was a bruised purple, heavy and low. I got into the driver's seat. I needed to drive. I needed to control the machine. As I merged onto the highway, heading toward the suburbs, I felt a strange sense of calm. For years, I had driven to that house, my house, with a knot of anxiety in my stomach. I had worried about what to wear, what to say, how to avoid triggering a fight. I had worried about being too much or not enough. Today, I worried about nothing. I was not going there to seek approval. I was going there to deliver a verdict. "They think I am staying away," I said, watching the familiar exit sign for Pineview Lane approach. "They think the 'don't come' text was a wall." "They forgot who built the wall," Pedro said. "They forgot who owns the land the wall is built on," I corrected. I turned into the subdivision. The lawns were green. The fences were white. It was the perfect American dream. And in 3 minutes, I was going to expose the nightmare rot living inside number 4402. I saw the smoke rising from the backyard before I saw the house. The barbecue was in full swing. I could see cars lining the street, my aunt's sedan, my cousin's truck. They were all there. The audience was assembled. I pulled my car up to the curb, right in front of the mailbox. I put it in park, but left the engine running for a moment. "Ready?" Pedro asked. I looked at the black binder on the seat between us. "No," I said, "but I am doing it anyway." I turned off the engine. The silence inside the car was absolute. I reached for the door handle. It was time to go to the party. The morning of the barbecue arrived with a deceptive calmness, the kind of stillness that hangs over the Pacific Northwest right before a storm front breaks the tree line. It was Sunday, October 26th, in the suburbs of Portland. This meant the synchronized hum of lawnmowers and the smell of wet pavement drying under a tentative, pale sun. I was not in the suburbs. I was in my apartment in the city, standing in front of my full-length mirror, conducting a final inspection of my armor. I had debated what to wear for 2 hours. A part of me, the part that was still the wounded sister, wanted to wear something soft, something that said, "I am just here to talk." But the chief operations executive in me knew better. You do not wear soft fabrics to a hostile takeover. You do not show vulnerability to people who have already proven they will weaponize it. I chose a charcoal blazer, tailored sharp enough to cut glass, and dark trousers, no jewelry, no softening accessories. I pulled my hair back so tightly that I could feel the tension on my scalp. I looked like I was going to court, which, in a way, I was. My phone, resting on the dresser, had been vibrating steadily since 9 o'clock. I picked it up and opened the family group chat. It was a window into a parallel reality where I did not exist. Aunt Linda. Just finished the potato salad. Added extra mustard. Just how Cole likes it. See you all at 1. Cousin Mike. Bringing the cooler and the speakers. Is the game on, Mom? We are heading over early to help set up. Cole says the smoker is already going. It smells amazing. There was a flurry of heart emojis. There were photos of marinating meat. There were jokes about who would be the first to get tipsy. There was absolutely no mention of me. It was a fascinating display of collective erasure. My mother, my father, my brother, they had all silently agreed to edit me out of the script. If they didn't mention my name, they didn't have to think about the felony they had committed the night before. If they focused on the potato salad, they didn't have to focus on the identity theft. They were building a fortress of denial. Brick by brick, burger by burger. I did not type a response. I did not leave the group. I simply watched the feed, documenting the timestamps. 10:30 a.m., 11:15 a.m. They were happy. They were relieved I wasn't coming. They thought they had successfully amputated the gangrenous limb, unaware that I was actually the heart that kept the blood moving. "Are you sure you want to do this alone?" I turned. Pedro was standing in the doorway of the bedroom. He was dressed in dark jeans and a black t-shirt, looking like a bodyguard who was off the clock but still carrying a weapon. "I have to," I said. "If you walk in there with me, holding my hand, they will change the narrative. They will say, 'Oh, look, Marley brought her husband to fight her battles.' They will make it about you and Cole. They will make it a testosterone contest." "Cole is unstable," Pedro said. "And Sloane is cornered. Cornered animals bite." "I know," I said. "That is why I need you to be the reserve force. I don't want you inside the house. I want you in the car, parked down the street, if I am not out in 20 minutes. Or if I text you the code word, you come in, and you don't come in to talk." "The code word is still Zurich." "Yes." Pedro nodded. He didn't like it. I could see it in the set of his jaw. But he respected the strategy. He handed me the folders, the black binder, the sealed envelope. "I checked the car," he said. "Full tank. Dash cam is active and recording to the cloud." "Good." I took the files. They felt heavy, not in weight, but in consequence. Inside that sealed envelope was the end of my relationship with my parents. I knew that. Once I handed over the notice to quit, once I laid out the evidence of the fraud, there would be no Christmas dinners. There would be no birthday cards. I was severing the tie. I walked to the living room and checked my laptop one last time. I logged into my bank portal. Status frozen. Alert 0 new inquiries. The perimeter was secure. But then, a notification popped up from my work email. It was Renee Voss. "Marley, I am sorry to bother you on a Sunday, but the listening post just flagged another incoming message to the general info box. It is from the same anonymous Proton Mail account. The subject line is, 'Evidence of embezzlement.' The body of the email claims to have proof that you are funneling company funds to a private offshore account. It is obviously fake. The proof is just a blurry screenshot of a generic Excel sheet, but the language is escalating. They are threatening to send it to the SEC and local news outlets." I read the message twice. Sloane was panicking. She was throwing rocks at a tank, hoping one of them would hit a viewport. Accusing a senior executive of embezzlement was a nuclear option. It showed she had no exit strategy. She was just trying to create enough chaos to force me to negotiate. I typed a reply to Renee Archive. "Preserve, do not engage. This confirms malice. We will add it to the defamation suit." I closed the laptop. "She is trying to get me fired," I said to Pedro. "She thinks if I lose my job, I will lose my power. She doesn't understand that my power doesn't come from my job title. It comes from the fact that I own the roof over her head." "She is desperate," Pedro said. "Desperation makes people sloppy," I replied. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Avery Lang. "Avery, update from the bank's fraud department. We just got the raw metadata on the loan application submission. I wanted you to have this before you went in." I opened the attachment. It was a technical log, a series of numbers and timestamps that would look like gibberish to my parents. But to me, it looked like a conviction. Source IP 192.168.1.14. ISP Comcast Xfinity Residential. Geolocation 4402 Pineview Lane. Device MAC. Address F84D89. Apple MacBook Pro. And then, the kicker. The timestamps showed the device had logged into the router's administrative panel 5 minutes before the application was sent. Avery. The device accessed the router admin settings using the default password, likely to bypass a firewall or check connectivity. This proves the user was physically inside the house and had control of the local network gateway. It ties the device, the location, and the act together perfectly. There is no "I was hacked" defense possible here. I looked at Pedro. The call came from inside the house. Literally, they used the Wi-Fi I pay for to rob me. "That is the nail in the coffin," Pedro said. "No," I said, sliding the phone into my pocket. "That is the shovel." I took a deep breath. Inhale, exhale. I visualized the outcome. I would walk in. I would not scream. I would not cry. I would place the documents on the table. I would deliver the notice. I would leave. "Let's go," I said. We took 2 cars. Pedro drove his truck, parking it a block away from Pineview Lane, where he had a clear view of the street but was out of sight of the party. I drove my sedan. The drive was a blur of gray highway and wet asphalt. I focused on my breathing. 4 seconds in, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds out. It was a technique I used before board meetings with hostile shareholders. It lowered the heart rate. It sharpened the vision. I turned into the subdivision. The transformation was immediate. The city noise faded, replaced by the idyllic silence of suburbia. Every lawn was manicured. Every fence was white. It was a landscape designed to hide things. I turned onto Pineview Lane. I saw the balloons first. A cluster of silver and gold balloons tied to the mailbox at number 4402. A handwritten sign said, "Cole Sloan's Big BBQ" with a smiley face. I slowed the car. The driveway was full. I recognized my father's Ford. I recognized my aunt's minivan. There were cars parked along the curb on both sides of the street, squeezing the passage narrow. I rolled down my window. The air smelled of charcoal fluid and grilling beef. I could hear music, some upbeat pop song that was currently popular on TikTok. I could hear laughter. It was a party, a genuine, loud, happy party, and for a second, just a split second, I felt a pang of profound isolation. They were having fun. They were celebrating. And they were doing it because they thought they had successfully tricked me. They thought the loan was approved, or at least, they were pretending it was to keep the mood up. They were drinking beer that, effectively, I had paid for, in a house I owned, celebrating a future they were trying to steal from me. I pulled my car up directly in front of the house, blocking the driveway. It was an aggressive parking job. I didn't care. I put the car in park. I turned off the engine. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. My face was pale, but my eyes were steady. There was no hesitation left in me. I looked at the passenger seat, the black binder, the sealed envelope. I reached for them. The leather of the binder was cool under my fingers. I stepped out of the car. The sound of the car door slamming shut was loud, a sharp mechanical crack that cut through the music. A few heads turned in the front yard. A neighbor I didn't recognize, holding a red Solo cup, looked at me with curiosity. He probably wondered who the woman in the $1,200 suit was, and why she looked like she was arriving at a funeral. I walked up the driveway. My heels clicked on the concrete. Click, click, click. I bypassed the front door. I knew the party was in the back. I walked along the side of the house, past the AC unit that I had replaced last summer for $4,000. I walked past the fence gate that had a broken latch I had been meaning to fix. I reached the gate. I could hear Sloane's voice. She was loud, projecting. "So we are thinking of expanding to Europe next year," she was saying. "Once the initial funding hits, it is going to be a rocket ship, truly." I paused. My hand hovered over the gate latch. She was still lying, even after the loan was rejected last night, even after the fraud alert. She was standing there, lying to my family, selling them a dream that she tried to finance with my nightmare. I pushed the latch. The gate swung open with a rusty squeak. I stepped into the backyard. The music seemed to stop, though I knew it didn't. The conversation died away in ripples, starting from the people nearest to me and spreading outward until the entire yard fell into a confused, heavy silence. I saw them all. My mother, holding a plate of deviled eggs, froze mid-step. My father, by the grill, dropped his tongs. Cole, standing next to a cooler, went pale, his eyes darting to Sloane like a frightened child looking for instruction. And Sloane, she was standing in the center of the patio, holding a glass of wine. She looked at me. Her expression shifted from shock to a sneer of pure annoyance. "Cole," she said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness that barely masked the venom. "I thought you said she wasn't coming. Did we run out of ice or something?" I did not look at her. I walked straight to the long folding table where the food was laid out. I pushed aside a bowl of potato salad and a tray of burgers to clear a space. I placed the black binder on the table. I placed the sealed envelope next to it. Then, I turned and faced them. I am not here for the ice, I said. My voice was not loud, but in the sudden silence of the yard, it carried like a gunshot. I am here for the inspection. The music had stopped, but the silence was louder than the bass line ever was. I stood at the edge of the patio, the black binder resting on the table between a tray of cooling burgers and a bowl of potato salad. 50 pairs of eyes were fixed on me. Some were curious, some were confused, but the ones that mattered my family's were wide with a dawning, terrible comprehension. Sloane was the first to break the paralysis. She marched toward me, her heels clicking on the pavers, her face flushed with wine and indignation. She stopped 3 feet away, blocking me from the rest of the party like a bouncer at a club. "Cole said you are not welcome," she shouted. Her voice was shrill, designed to rally the crowd to her side. She gestured wildly to the guests. "Everyone, this is exactly what I was talking about. She just shows up uninvited to ruin our moment. Who does that leave? Marley, get off our property before I call the police." I looked at her. I did not blink. "I would encourage you to call the police." "Sloane," I said, my voice calm, projecting clearly across the yard. "It would save me the trouble of filing the report myself." I looked past her, locking eyes with Cole. He was standing by the cooler, holding a beer that he seemed to have forgotten he was holding. He looked small. "And as for getting off your property," I continued, "that brings me to the first item on the agenda." I opened the black binder. The snap of the ring's opening was sharp and precise. I pulled out the deed and the lease agreement. "You seem to be under the impression that this is Cole's house," I said, addressing the silent crowd. "Cole has told you all that he bought this place, that he worked angles, that he made a deal with the owner." I held up the document. "The owner is a company called Juniper Ridge Holdings," I said. "And Juniper Ridge Holdings is a single-member LLC. That member is me." A ripple of shock went through the yard. I heard my Aunt Linda gasp. I saw my father's face turn a shade of gray I had never seen before. He looked at the house, then at me, then at Cole. "You own this," my father whispered. "I bought it 2 years ago when Cole was facing eviction," I said. "I renovated it. I pay the property taxes. I pay the insurance. And I subsidize the rent by 30%, so Cole can afford to live here." I turned back to Sloane. Her mouth was opening and closing, but no sound was coming out. The narrative of the successful power couple was disintegrating in real time. "So," I said, "when you banned me from the barbecue, you were effectively banning the landlord from inspecting her own asset, and under Oregon law, I have the right to enter the premises immediately if I suspect the property is being used for illegal activities." "Illegal!" Sloane finally found her voice. She laughed, but it sounded frantic. "Oh my God. You are psychotic. What is illegal? Having a party. You are just a jealous, lonely bitch who can't stand that we are happy." "Jealousy has nothing to do with it," I said. "Fraud does." I pulled the second document from the binder. It was the loan application alert and the IP address log. "Last night at 9:31, I said, holding the paper up for my parents to see. "An application for a commercial line of credit was submitted to a regional bank. The amount was $520,000. I saw my mother flinch. She took a step back, bumping into the table. "The primary applicant was me," I said. "But I did not apply. Someone used my social security number. Someone used my date of birth. Someone used a spoofed email address designed to look like my mother's to bypass the identity verification protocols." I looked directly at my mother. "DarlenePerry88@gmail.com. Does that look familiar?" "Mom," she put a hand over her mouth. Tears began to spill down her cheeks. But she didn't say a word. She didn't deny it. Her silence was a confession that everyone in the yard heard loud and clear. "The application was co-signed by Cole Perry," I continued. "And the digital forensic log shows that it was submitted from this house, using the Wi-Fi network that I pay for." I dropped the papers onto the table. They landed with a heavy slap. "That is wire fraud," I said. "That is aggravated identity theft. That is a federal crime punishable by up to 30 years in prison. The silence in the yard was absolute. The neighbors were not drinking their beer anymore. They were witnessing a demolition. Sloan lunged forward. He signed it. Cole signed it. He said you were okay with it. He said you guys had a deal. She was pivoting. She was throwing him under the bus to save herself. I looked at Cole. Is that true? Cole? Did I agree to give you $500,000? Cole looked at Sloan. Then at me. He was trembling. The facade of the businessman was gone. All that was left was the little boy who used to cry when he scraped his knee. I didn't know, Cole stammered. You didn't know what I asked. I didn't know it was that much. Cole blurted out. Sloan just handed me the tablet. She said it was for the LLC paperwork. She said Mom helped set it up so we wouldn't bother you. I just signed it. I didn't read the number. A collective gasp went through the crowd. You didn't read the number, I repeated. But you admitted you signed it, and you admitted you knew Mom was helping with the paperwork to bypass me. I thought we were just borrowing your credit profile, Cole cried, tears running down his face. Sloan said families do that. She said you wouldn't mind because you have so much. So you stole from me, I said. Because you felt entitled to it. It wasn't stealing, Sloan shrieked. We were going to pay it back. You are ruining everything. You are ruining his life over a technicality. A $520,000 technicality, I said. Sloan grabbed a bottle of wine from the table. For a second, I thought she was going to throw it at me. Her eyes were wild. You think you can just come here and wave papers around? You think you are better than us? You are nothing. You are just a bank account. Nobody here likes you. Nobody. That may be true, I said. But fortunately, the law does not require you to like me. It only requires you to pay me. I reached into the folder and pulled out the final document. The notice to quit. Sloan Whitaker, I said. Cole Perry. This is a formal notice to quit for cause. You have breached the lease agreement by conducting criminal activity on the premises. You have 72 hours to vacate this property. If you are not out by Wednesday at noon, the sheriff will remove you. You can't do that, Sloan screamed. We have rights. This is our home. Not anymore, I said. Then, from the side gate, there was a metallic click. Everyone turned. Walking into the yard was not Pedro. It was a woman with short dark hair, wearing a trench coat. Beside her was a tall, broad-shouldered man holding a stack of papers. It was Tessa Rowland. Sloane's face went white. Whatever color had been there from the wine and the rage drained away instantly. She looked like she had seen a ghost. Hello, Sloan, Tessa said. Her voice was shaking slightly, but she stood her ground. Who is that? My father asked, looking confused. That is Tessa, I said. Sloane's former roommate, the one Sloan accused of being a drug addict, the one Sloan stole $18,000 from using the exact same scheme she just tried to use on me. The man beside Tessa stepped forward. He walked straight up to Sloan. Sloan Whitaker, he asked. Sloan took a step back. No, get away from me. You are served, the man said. He thrust the papers into her hand. She refused to take them, so he dropped them at her feet. Civil lawsuit for fraud, defamation, and emotional distress on behalf of Tessa Rowland, and a subpoena for the pending investigation regarding the Perry case. Sloan stared at the papers on the grass. Then, she snapped. She didn't attack me. She didn't attack Tessa. She turned on Cole. You idiot, she screamed, shoving Cole hard in the chest. He stumbled back into the cooler, knocking it over. Ice and beer cans spilled everywhere. I told you to fix this. I told you to make sure she didn't find out. You are useless. You are a weak, pathetic mama's boy. Sloan, Cole whispered, shocked. Don't Sloan me, she yelled. Her face twisted into a mask of pure hatred. I should have never been with you. You have no money. You have no spine. I had to do everything I had to steal just to get you to look like a man. The silence of the barbecue was gone, replaced by the ugly, raw sound of a relationship dying loudly. My parents stood there, watching the perfect fiancé rip their golden child to shreds. They looked horrified. They looked like people waking up from a long, expensive dream to find their house on fire. I watched for a moment. Then, I turned to my parents. They were standing together, clutching each other. My mother was weeping silently. My father looked old, defeated. "Mom, Dad," I said. They looked at me. "On Friday," I said. "When Cole sent that text banning me, you liked it? You sent hearts? You laughed? You chose to humiliate me because it was easier than defending me." My father opened his mouth to speak, but I held up a hand. "And last night," I continued, "when I stopped the theft, you told me to be quiet. You told me not to call the police. You were more afraid of the neighbors seeing a squad car than you were of your daughter losing $500,000. Marley, my mother sobbed. 2 times, I said. 2 times in 3 days. You had a choice between doing what was right and doing what was comfortable, and both times. You chose silence." I gestured to the chaos behind me, Sloane screaming, Cole crying, the neighbors whispering. "This is what your silence bought you," I said. "Enjoy the barbecue." I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. I didn't wait for them to apologize. I knew they wouldn't, or if they did, it would be the desperate apology of people who need something. I didn't need anything from them anymore. I walked out the gate, past the silent neighbors. Down the driveway, I got into my car. Pedro was waiting down the street, his engine running, ready to back me up. I texted him one word, "Done." I drove away from Pineview Lane. I didn't feel happy. Revenge is not sweet. That is a lie people tell. Revenge is heavy. It is exhausting. But as I merged onto the highway, watching the exit for the suburbs disappear in my rearview mirror, I felt something better than happiness. I felt light. Epilogue. The fallout was swift and total. Sloane did not leave quietly. She trashed the house on her way out, ripping copper piping from the walls in a final act of spite. Juniper Ridge Holdings sued her for damages, and combined with Tessa's lawsuit and the bank's federal investigation, Sloane was facing a future of court dates and bankruptcy. She fled to Arizona. But the warrants followed her. Cole filed for divorce 2 months later. His credit was destroyed. Without my subsidies, he had to move back into my parents' basement at the age of 33. He reached out to me once, asking for a loan to hire a lawyer. I directed him to the public defender's office. My parents tried to reconcile. They sent cards. They left voicemails saying they missed me. They blamed Sloane for brainwashing them. They never admitted their own greed. I blocked their numbers. I sold the house on Pineview Lane to a nice young family who actually paid the rent. As for me, I got the Zurich contract. The deal went through, and Aldercrest Dynamics expanded globally. I work hard. I travel. And on Sunday afternoons, my apartment is quiet. Sometimes, Pedro and I cook dinner. We sit at our own table, in a home that we own, eating food that we bought, surrounded by peace that we built. It is a small table, but for the first time in my life, every seat is filled by someone who respects me, and that is the only feast I will ever need. Thank you so much for listening to this story of betrayal, justice, and the high cost of silence. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. Are you listening from a rainy city like Marley, or somewhere sunny? Please leave a comment below with your location and your thoughts on how Marley handled her family. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the Juliet Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit that hype button so we can share these stories with even more people.